Hello and welcome to another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Jamie Johnson, the government and political correspondent. Our guest today is candidate for Hudson City Council, Sarah Bruch. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Jamie, and thanks for your time today. And a big thank you to the River Channel for hosting this and making sure our residents are informed. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, we have started these interviews. I don't know what order they'll be played or whatever, but you are a candidate for District 5. Is that correct?
That is true. Kind of in the heart of downtown Hudson.
All right. And so why don't we start with just your qualifications, background, and then we'll move into your motivations for running and major issues and so forth. It'll take off after that. We have a finite amount of time because we want to keep it fair, and so it's identical amount of time as your opponent, who we've already interviewed. So we've got about 23 minutes left. Why don't you start with your qualifications and background?
That sounds good. Just so folks know, my husband is Brian Bruch. He's a teacher in the community, and we have lived here for 30 years. We've raised our 4 sons in this great city. For the past 15 years, I've been a small business owner in our city's downtown. And on a daily basis, I get to work with other leaders, community members, and employees, really working to further enhance our city's vibrancy. And then these are skills that I've been able to leverage and that I will continue to hone and bring to our city if I'm able to serve in this capacity. Recently, I have completed my master's degree in sustainable business management, and a huge focus of that has been on building sustainable communities. I am eager for the opportunity to help the city continue to evolve and to hopefully better meet the needs of our current citizens while ensuring we're protecting and being good stewards for future residents.
Okay. So why do you want to serve on the Hudson City Council?
You know, as I've reflected on this, I think as I think about who's presently serving on there, who's up for election, who's not, I think I bring a unique voice that can really complement folks that are already serving. I bring a voice of with a real focus on sustainable management, a real commitment to doing everything we can to meet our current needs without running the risk of harming anything for future generations. I think given the state where we are in the world with a real focus on climate change and the reality that folks that are kind of in that zone of 35 and under, regardless of your political affiliation, it's something like close to almost 80% believe in climate change, and they think a lot of it is human caused. And so that is a real focus for me in making sure that we're protecting our natural environment. And I think that's a strong voice I can bring and be helpful to our city evolve and continue to grow. Okay. Responsibly. Grow responsibly.
So, thinking about the business that the City Council has before it, what do you see as the most important issues over these next 2 years?
I gotta tell you, that's a really hard question because everything that's kind of facing the city is important to someone, right? But there certainly are more pressing issues. And as I've been attending city council meetings for a number of years and really faithfully for the last year, one of the things that has caused me huge concern is kind of the tone that we're seeing during public comments. And that's kind of trickling on a daily basis and how we're treating each other. And while I am a firm believer in the First Amendment and believing in protecting and honoring that, I do think it's absolutely mandatory to not allow hateful or defaming comments. And I just think we can't condone that as a city or allow that to happen. So I think restoring kindness and civility and civil discourse is of utmost importance, because until we can communicate with people who think differently and can focus on our shared goals, it's going to be really tough to accomplish anything. So that's one of my first priorities. Then this is a really big overarching theme, but it's kind of under the theme of general livability in our city. Some of these items in general livability include protecting our green spaces, our parks, our walking paths, increasing bike paths, safe bike options for people. We've also seen, and it's not a new issue to our city, Jamie, but it's workforce housing. You know, we are really struggling I know you're on the school board, our teachers struggle to live here. So do our police officers, so do our city employees. I've talked with city department heads who can't afford to live in our community. Affordable housing, workforce housing, not new, but nothing's ever happened. This has to be readdressed. We got to get that under control and figured out. Transportation issues are a big thing facing our community as well. I also think keeping citizens informed is really crucial. You know, the role of the newspaper has changed over the years, and it's so different from, Jamie, when you and I first, Jamie, how long have you lived here?
31 years.
Okay, so around the same time. So, I mean, the role of the newspaper has changed hugely since we first came here. So how do we communicate with citizens? How do we keep them engaged? How do we let them know what's going on? How do we get them active in our communities? So those are some of the tasks I have under livability. I know it sounds like it's a piece of cake and it'll be no big deal. Just kidding. It's really big issues, and it's really at the crux of having an enjoyable community to live in. Last, of my top priorities, right? Again, there's so many that this is just kind of broad brush strokes. But one of the things I've been doing as I've been preparing for this position is I have been meeting with elected officials in our community and with key city employees. And the overwhelming answer that every one of them, well, everyone but one, okay, gave me as the most important issue was our city's infrastructure. The crux of the situation is that probably for the past 2 decades, we have been penny wise, really trying to be protective of our taxpayers, which I understand it's important to be good stewards of that. But we've been pound foolish. We have not done a good job addressing our roads and our utilities. There is a rating system that determines how good your roads are. And a 10 is like, oh my goodness, this is brand new, amazing. And 1, oh my goodness, we have gravel roads with huge ruts in them. And sadly, you know, we're in that 5 zone. And so we have a lot of work to do to get caught up on that. We do have incredible experts that work in the city who have been really researching ways to do this so it's the least impactful for our residents. But the truth of the matter is, this is a priority and we need to get it fixed, and it's super important. So those are a few of my top areas that I'd like to start on.
Okay, and we may circle back to a few of them as we go through these questions.
Sure.
But our next question is, are there areas, as you've addressed your you're researching this position, so to speak, and so forth, do you see in the budget areas where we could reduce spending without reducing services?
Well, I do have a few thoughts and ideas, but I do want people to know that overall, I think we're good stewards. We are very cautious with our spending. For the size of our city, we don't have nearly the staffing that a lot of other places have, a lot of similar sized communities. So we are very judicious with how we spend. That being said, I think there are a few options that could make some impacts. In January, our Common Council voted to support making improvements to our Common Council chambers. While I acknowledge this is ultimately probably something that should be done, I'm just not sure that the timing is quite right. You know, here we are, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We are seeing businesses not make it. We are seeing families not make it. We are seeing huge food insecurity issues. And at a time when everybody's having to tighten their belt, I just think it's the wrong message. And I don't think it's a necessity at this point. I would have been really uncomfortable supporting something like that. That would have been something I would not have been able to get behind. So that is one thing. The other thing that's become clear as I talk to city employees, at the moment, we do a lot of contract work, and sometimes there's no way around it. Sometimes you have to hire the experts, right? And so sometimes that is the right avenue. An example that's happened in our city, about a year and a half ago, we brought in a city engineer, and we have found that it has saved our city and perhaps even helped recoup some funding. We used to contract for that work, and now when the city engineer goes out and works with developers, we're able to actually bill his time and expertise to those developers. So he is helping the city and recouping a huge percentage of his annual salary. So maybe we could look and see if there's other areas where we could do that. So that's a spot I would look at when I get in and push my sleeves up and get working a little bit more on this. The other thing I think, I mentioned I have a commitment to sustainability, and the future are hybrids and EVs, and really hybrids aren't the future. Electric vehicles are. We're seeing major automobile industries that are making the commitment to have everything be electric vehicles. I am proposing that we get started on this. We're a smidge behind the times on this one, and research has shown that per vehicle can save as much as $4,000 on fuel. That's not even talking about repairs. Repairs on electric vehicles are way less. I know there's some concerns about the spent batteries or the used batteries, but the good news is a lot of research is being done to address those concerns, and a lot of them can actually have second lives, like providing as like an emergency backup for an elevator. That's a whole nother topic, obviously, but those are just some of the very first spots I would take a look at to see what we could do.
Okay. Next up, you had mentioned previously infrastructure. So considering that you are critical that their condition of roads is not where it ought to be, what do you believe as far as the city plan? Where could it be improved for maintaining our city's infrastructure?
Okay. Well, one, I just want to say maybe not critical, but I am certainly respectful of the experts that are in place. And those are our paid professionals who have schooling and a lot of background knowledge.
Yeah, and maybe I misstated there or overstated. I know it's a matter of priorities too, because you wouldn't be the first candidate to have mentioned that, there's decisions going back 15, 20 years as far as trying to save money now, but then ending up paying a lot more down the road. So I guess it's budgetary. But get back to your views on our city's infrastructure.
Well, the really good news is we've acknowledged it's a problem, right? That's a great starting point. So, and I think there's huge consensus across the board that we have to do something. And we have put the right employees in place that are working on things like funding, bonding, grants, a whole variety of options. Even, I can't remember what the technical name for it, but there's like a use, I think it's user tax. So that would maybe impact like the big box stores a little bit more because they have way more usage and draw on infrastructure than residents or small businesses. So a user tax that would be based to help with that funding. So one, we've acknowledged it, which is huge. Two, we're coming up with a workable plan. And so I have hope. And I have hope because I think there's so many people that recognize we need to fix this, because if we don't, we're going to be passing this on to the next generation. And we're left dealing with something that wasn't handled probably as it should have been. And now we're fixing it, and it sure wouldn't be right to do that to the future.
Okay, very good. Now, Hudson is going through a new comprehensive plan procedure, and recently there was, well, it wasn't so recently, it was almost 10 months ago, I think, there was a survey. Actually, it was more than that because I distinctly remember filling it out while I was at a Rotary meeting, and we haven't met for Rotary in a year. So it was over a year ago, and it was a survey that went to city residents and business owners and so forth. And to try and find out what the priorities would be from the public for future development and just comprehensive plan in general, which includes zoning. So I'm assuming that you participated in that process. So the public would like to know, what's Sarah Bruch's priorities when it comes to the next comprehensive plan?
Well, I think a few things. I think one, we didn't get, my understanding is the city was a little bit disappointed because we didn't get the responses we had hoped for. Now, like you're indicating, it went on, and it was even open during the pandemic. So things were, a little kittywampus and not usual, right?
Right.
But I think one of the issues is, how do we get citizens to become involved and engaged and answer that? So one of the things I would encourage, and I know they tried a few options. I know they did. But I think as our population age shifts and we get younger folks in here, I think we have to think of creative ways of how we're going to engage the residents. Is it social media? There's a variety of different tools to engage folks and make sure that they know what's going on. So one, I would hope we would get better participation in the future, or maybe even consider opening it up again and seeing if we could try some other strategies to get more responses. I would like to see more of a focus on climate change as I look at that. Here we are, we're right on the beautiful river. We have flooding issues almost on an annual basis. And I know we're going to be doing some things to help that. But, are we doing a good job of making sure that we're set up to be ready for the next 10, 20, 30 years? Are we setting our future generations up to have success? Or are we going to be strapping them with burdens where we weren't as proactive as we should have been? So that would be something I'd like to see have a greater priority on. I also would like to see a real talk about smart growth, and growth for the sake of growth isn't always the right way to do it. So that would be an area that I'd want to take into consideration as well. And wanting to make sure that we're really focused on, shared spaces, parks, our paths, increasing our bike pathway. I think, have you found yourself outside and enjoying nature a lot more in the last year, Jamie, or were you already a champion of that?
Well, I would say it's about the same, but yeah, I would try to get as much as possible, right?
Yes, I know that. I know for me, and I've always been an outdoor lover, but this year I have spent so much more time outside, whether it's walking or, as a way to connect with people where it's a little bit more safe. And I think we have a responsibility to really take good care of that because we know how important that is for mental health, physical health. So I would like to really make sure that that's a top priority as well.
Well, and before we leave the comprehensive plan question, because I know, recall, we're asking for priorities, and affordable housing was in there, and I've heard that in your early issues of priorities, and you used a different term other than affordable housing, but
workforce housing.
Workforce housing, and which is kind of a big deal because that's you wouldn't be the first person I've heard from that we have too many employees that work in the city of Hudson that cannot live in the city of Hudson. And so a few of the candidates have, expounded on that, but, they're wondering, are we talking about price controls and, this is, a capitalist society and developers won't build a development unless they can make money at it. And it's hard to do that if you limit the cost of the houses that are in there. So how do you fix that?
Well, I think the first starting point is other communities are doing it, Jamie. Why don't we reach out to them? They've had success at it. What are they doing? Let's learn from them. Let's reach out to places like Habitat for Humanity who excel at this and who want to be part of our community and create those kind of housing options. I think there's so many opportunities, and I think it needs a strong voice championing it. And I think I was told that in River Falls, when they had a hard time having more of that workforce housing, that they were able to create in their industrial park, where they have a lot of manufacturing employees, kind of workforce housing apartments, so that they could start out there, build up some resources, and then ultimately, purchase a home or a townhouse in the community. I don't know all the specifics on it, but they would be one of the first places I would call and find out. And I would do more research on that. There have to be developers out there because it happens in other communities. So I think it's just somebody willing to do the legwork and the footwork and find out how it's been done and really navigating it and championing it as well. It's super important. Anyways, thank you.
Yeah, well, we got 2 questions left, and I just saw we're down to 3 minutes. So, what are your thoughts regarding downtown Hudson, the historic district, and redevelopment in Lakefront Park? Because I know your district includes all those areas. Yeah. So,
I do think there's some really important things that we need to talk about. Our library and funding is super important, and there's been I've had a chance to meet with the library director, and she has some great plans in place on how we can renegotiate and set up opportunities to kind of work on the funding issue. So that is certainly something that's not only important to the downtown area, to the community at large, but it is downtown, and I know a lot of walking folks enjoy that. With respect to the Lakefront Park, again, green spaces, protecting those, our riverway, protecting that, not only is that a beautiful natural environment, it is a huge draw and tourism for the downtown businesses and surrounding areas as well, and up on the hill. So I think our lakefront, we need to treat it like the gem it is and polish it and make sure that we are protecting it and keeping it so that it's safe and open for everybody to enjoy. Was there another area in there that you wanted?
Overall, the historic district, there had been comments about, the downtown being in a TIF, and that some of the projects that are coming online and being built are inconsistent with the historic nature of the downtown. And you're a downtown business owner, so I was wondering, what do you feel about that?
So one thing that's become abundantly clear to me in a short period of time, everything is a balance, right? There is really no perfect solution. But this is what I know too. I think we could do a better job at doing stakeholder engagement. I think back to when the school tried to build the high school, and they had 2 referendums that they tried to pass. And they created a vision, and it was beautiful, right? But citizens were not on board with that vision. And so when they did a stakeholder engagement, that's when we got the high school we have now. Is it perfect? Probably not, but it is so workable. And people from both ideologies, or kind of multiple perspectives, came forward and were able to have their voices heard and to share their perspectives. And that's the exact same format that I think we need to do in these situations. Is it hard? Absolutely. Is it time consuming? Absolutely. But will the long-term solutions be helpful and positively impactful? Yes. So I think you have to balance it all. Sometimes you need to have development, but certainly the residents and the business community need to have a voice.
30 seconds. Do you think the city should annex or rezone more land?
Okay, that's a really long, complex question. The answer is it depends. There's so many variables. Do we have the infrastructure to meet those needs? That's the very first one. If we don't, how are we going to fund it? Who's going to pay for that? Is that the developer that's going to pay for it? What do stakeholders think? Is it a good decision for everybody? So there's a lot of things that need to be considered. Additionally, in order for land to be annexed, the landowner has to actually approach the city with interest. So there's a lot that has to go into play to make it happen. Could it happen? It might. Will it be an easy and quick solution and quick work? Absolutely not. But I am a firm believer in stakeholder engagement. That is something we need to get the public's opinion on. Absolutely.
Very good. Well, with that, we have to come to an end. Our time is up. I'm sorry. But thank you for coming on the show, Sarah. Appreciate you doing that. And good luck with your candidacy. Do you have a Facebook page or website?
I sure do. So any questions or comments, please reach out to me. It's Sarah Bruch for Hudson, and then that's the website. And then our Facebook page is Sarah Bruch for District 5.
Very good.
Thank you,
Thanks
James.
for coming on the show. And I want to thank our viewers for watching another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal. Please get out there and vote on April 6th.